How's it going, baseball fans? Welcome back to my positional rankings. You already know what time it is. It's day 3, so let's get on with second baseman. As usual, this list is based on stats, it's based on peripherals, it's based on some of my own projections. It's basically a list of who I'd want on my team for the 2025 season. We've got a lot of talented second basemen to talk about, so let's dive right into it. Starting us off at 30 is Thairo Estrada of the Rockies. For a guy I have ranked 30, Estrada is not a bad player. He's actually a really good defender, which is pretty important at second base. The offense was pretty dreadful last year, but he's been a decent hitter before. A move to Coors Field can only help, and the defense will always play, but for now he's number 30 on this list. There just isn't a whole lot of upside. Number 29 is Juan Brito of the Cleveland Guardians. So the tough thing about Brito is he's never actually played in a major league game, but he is the projected starter for Cleveland this year. He's got a good skill set, he looks like he might be a talented guy, but even in the minors he was never much of a hitter. I truly think he's just filling in until Travis Bazzana is ready, which might be as soon as this year. Until then, he'll do fine. I'm sure he'll be able to play defense just fine at the major league level. The bat is more of a question mark, which is why he's ranked as low as he is, but there's some upside. Number 28 is Brooks Lee of the Minnesota Twins. Let me start off by saying I think Brooks Lee is a really talented player. He wasn't good in a small sample last year, but he definitely will be. I'm not confident enough that he'll have a big leap forward in 2025 to put him much higher, but I think going forward he's a player to watch out for. Unlike first base and catcher, I really don't think any team is in a bad spot second base-wise. So even though Lee's all the way down at 28, I don't mind him for 2025. Number 27 is Hae-Sung Kim of the Dodgers. On the surface, it's hard to know what to do with Kim. His KBO numbers don't blow you away, and even though there's a lot of upside, there's some question marks too. But it's the Dodgers. I know they see something that I don't. They're going to find a way to get more out of this guy than I could possibly expect. I can't really put him any higher without improving something in the major leagues, but I think he'll be just fine. Number 26 is Josh Rojas of the Chicago White Sox. Rojas was not a bad pickup for a Chicago team looking for just a little bit of consistency. He's no star, but he makes this team better. He's a good defender and has some versatility to him, and though he didn't hit much last year, we know he can be a better hitter than he was. His numbers are bound to go up a little bit leaving Seattle, known to torture its hitters. Perhaps he can settle into a role of being a guy the White Sox count on for some offense in what'll be another rough year. Number 26 is Zach Gelof of the A's. I'm not sure anyone in baseball had their stock fall more this year. After a great short 2023, Zach Gelof was horrible this year. His hitting results were some of the worst in all of Major League Baseball this year, and somehow the peripherals weren't much better. He was so good in 2023, but the fall-off was so sharp, which makes it really hard to predict what he'll do this year. I won't be surprised if he bounces back, but after last year, it's really hard to be counting on it. Number 24 is Seattle Mariner Dylan Moore. Moore is simply solid, nothing more, nothing less. The defense is pretty average, the bat is a little bit below average, but only a little bit. The peripherals suggest the same. He has excellent plate discipline. He's weaker in other areas, but it averages out to a pretty solid hitter. At this point, you pretty much know what to expect from Moore, and that's not a bad thing. Number 23 is Jeff McNeil of the New York Mets. The fall-off has been pretty sharp the last few years, but the peripherals suggest it was kind of inevitable. Even in his batting title winning year, the plate discipline wasn't great, and he never really hit the ball very hard. He relied on squaring up the baseball and then that baseball finding holes. But unfortunately, it's hard to do that consistently when you don't hit the ball very hard. All the same, I think he's a better hitter than he was last year, and somewhere around league average is probably where you can hope McNeil will fall. Number 22 is Tyler Fitzgerald of the Giants. I wanted to put him higher, I really did, but I'm concerned. He looks to have way overperformed this year. The gap between his WOBA and his expected WOBA is 62 points. That is huge. And that's not all. For a guy who put up a .497 slugging percentage, his expected slugging percentage was over 100 points lower at .378. He was so good in 2024, but I don't think that level of success is sustainable. He'll be solid again, but regression is inevitable. Number 21 is Luis Rengifo of the Angels. I'm sorry I have to do it again, but Rengifo is almost the same case. The gap between his WOBA and ex-WOBA is 42 points, not as big as Fitzgerald's, but still very significant. The peripherals don't support him being as productive of a hitter as he was last year, and he's just not a good defender either, which matters at second base. And again, that's not to say Rengifo's a bad player, but there is just no doubt that he overperformed in 2024. He is not a 117 WRC plus hitter. He's a good second baseman, but once again, regression is going to be inevitable this year. Number 20 is Jackson Holliday of the Baltimore Orioles. Holliday moved up and down this list multiple times before settling into the number 20 spot. He hasn't been good, but in his last call-up, he looked a lot better. Last year's peripherals were kind of ugly, but he was so young, I'm not too worried about it. The talent's there, and it'll show up. It's a matter of when, not if. 2025 will be a step forward, but not his full potential yet. He's only 21. But I think the step forward is going to be big enough that he'll be a top 20 second baseman next year and perhaps even better. Number 19 is Gleyber Torres of the Detroit Tigers. Torres is complicated, man. He's an awful defender and an awful base runner, but he can be such a great hitter. The problem is he provides almost no value when he isn't hitting well. He was a good hitter last year, but only good enough to get his WAR up to 1.7. My problem going forward is the ballpark change. Yankee Stadium was a pretty good fit for him. Detroit definitely isn't. His expected home run total drops from 17 to 9 if you put him in Detroit last year. He's this high because of his talent, but I'm concerned his bat won't be able to justify his glove anymore. Number 18 is Nick Gonzalez of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Gonzalez found himself in 2024. After a midseason call-up, he was an around-average hitter and a well-above-average defender. Over a full season, his WAR extrapolates to a little over 2, and the peripherals show he may have even underperformed that by a little. I'm pretty high on Gonzalez. He's solid in just about every aspect of the game, and I think more is coming in 2025. I just need to see more before he goes any higher. Number 17 is Bryson Stott of the Phillies. Stott has struggled to consistently produce on offense. My biggest concern with him is that he doesn't hit the ball very hard. His barrel rate and hard hit rate are both in the 10th percentile among major leaguers. That said, he's good at squaring up the ball, and he doesn't swing and miss much. The defense isn't elite, but it's plenty good enough to provide value to a team. Stott's another guy who's solid at pretty much everything. I don't think he'll ever be a star, but he'll be a very productive player for a Phillies team looking to make it back to the World Series this year. Number 16 is Michael Massey of the Kansas City Royals. Massey is another solid defender, but he's a bit of a step up from our last couple of entries offensively. By WRC+, he was 2% better than the average hitter last year, which combined with his 4 outs above average and 2 fielding run value, both comfortably above average for major leaguers, makes for a really solid player. The plate discipline is dreadful. That's the biggest knock against him. But otherwise, he looks primed to continue being a good hitter. He'll be an important part of this up-and-coming Royals offense. Number 15 is Jake Cronenworth of the Padres. Cronenworth has always been a good hitter. He put up a 105 WRC+ in 2024, and his peripherals make it look like he could be even better next year. His expected WOBA is 23 points higher than his WOBA, and all of his other expected numbers look really solid. He also has strong plate discipline, and he doesn't swing and miss very often. He's not a great defender, but with that bat, he's plenty good enough. Jake Cronenworth is a very solid top 15 second baseman. Number 14 is Bryce Terang of the Milwaukee Brewers. Terang's not much of a hitter, but he's not meant to be. His defense is where his value comes from. Depending on which stat you believe, he's either one of the best defenders in baseball or just a very, very good defender. I believe the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. He's one of the best. The peripherals suggest he'll never be a great hitter, but he doesn't need to be that great with a glove as good as his. Defense in the middle infield will always be crucial. At 13, we have Otto Lopez of the Marlins. I would make the argument that Otto Lopez is just a slightly better version of Bryce Terang. His 91 WRC+ is a little higher, and his peripherals show a little more room for growth. He's also a better fielder by outs above average and fielding run value, with 14 and 11 respectively. They're pretty similar players overall, but I think Lopez has a little more offensive upside, and depending on what stat you use, might be a better defender too. Number 12 is Matt McLain of the Cincinnati Reds. McLain missed all of 2024, but we can't forget how good he was in 2023. With an 864 OPS and a 127 WRC+, McLain was electric in 2023. He hits the ball hard, he makes good contact, and he fields quite well too. He may be a little slow coming off missing an entire season, but I know Matt McLain will be back. That's why he's in my top 12. Number 11 is Luis Garcia of the Washington Nationals. I'll admit, I didn't know before making this list how good Garcia was. He was very good in 2024 with a 111 WRC+ and a 3.1 WAR. All of his expected stats are really high too, so this wasn't just a lucky season. Aside from his plate discipline, which is admittedly pretty poor, his entire Baseball Savant page is glowing of red. He's also a very good defender, coming in the 76th percentile in fielding run value and the 89th percentile in outs above average. People don't know how good he is, and I'll admit, I was just one of them. Number 10 is Ozzie Albies of the Atlanta Braves. Albies is really confusing to me. He's about as consistent as the San Francisco Giants during the 2010s. Some years he's as good offensively as just about anybody, and others he's average at best. I mean, just look at his last 3 years, a 703 OPS to an 849 OPS to a 707 OPS. He's not a great defender. The bat is where he gets his value, and that's what makes it really hard to rank him when his bat is so inconsistent. There's been health issues, and the floor is pretty high, so I can't rank him too low. He could easily move back up. Number 9 is Brendan Donovan of the Cardinals. Donovan's an underrated player. None of his numbers jump off the page, but he's just so consistently good. He's been remarkably consistent on a Cardinals team that's had a lot of turmoil lately. He has excellent bat-to-ball skills, enough power to make some big hits happen, and is also a very solid defender. There's almost nothing Donovan does poorly. He's just very good in every aspect of the game. Number 8 is Andres Gimenez, now of the Blue Jays. I'm operating under the assumption Gimenez will never hit like his 2022 self again, but frankly, that's just fine. His offensive peripherals are as bad as his results, but he's one of the best defenders in all of baseball. His 21 outs above average were in the 100th percentile, and his 14 fielding run value was in the 97th percentile. Not much else to say, the glove is that good. Number 7 is Nico Horner of the Chicago Cubs. Horner is a fascinating baseball savant page. He boasts a whiff percentage and K percentage in the 99th percentile. He doesn't swing and miss. He also hits the ball as softly as anybody in the major leagues. That said, he squares up the ball and has the speed to make that contact play. He's also a very strong defender. His 11 outs above average is in the 95th percentile. He's valuable. Number 6 is Brandon Lowe of the Tampa Bay Rays. Brandon Lowe crushes baseballs. His defense is average at best, his plate discipline isn't great, he swings and misses a lot, but you know what? He can hit. He put up a 123 WRC plus last year, the third highest of any qualified second baseman. And yet, his actual WOBA was still lower than his expected WOBA. The same goes for his expected average and expected slugging. The biggest concern with Lowe has been his health, but as long as he's on the field, he's a top-end second baseman for sure. He also recently made some comments about being interested in being a Ray for life. That's cool, small loyalty bonus point. Number 5 is Jose Altuve of the Houston Astros. Altuve is still a great hitter. His 127 WRC plus was the second highest among second basemen last year. His expected WOBA tells you he may have overperformed some, but even then his peripherals back up. He's still a great hitter. He's getting older. He's not quite what he used to be, but he's still one of the better offensive second basemen in baseball. Interestingly, what's really suffered as he's gotten older is his defense. His -6 fielding run value was in the 11th percentile, and his -9 outs above average was in the 3rd percentile. Defense brings him down some, but the bat still plays. Another good year is coming. Number 4 is Jazz Chisholm of the New York Yankees. I think the trade to New York is going to end up aging well for Jazz. The ballpark fits him well, and he just seems to love being in the New York spotlight. He was good again last year, and even better after he got traded from Miami to New York. He was very good defensively, and the switch back to second base should only make that even better. And the offense was solid as always. He's also an elite base runner. His 4 base running value is in the 92nd percentile. Jazz is a really good player, and a full season in New York should do him some good. Number 3 is Alex Bregman of the Boston Red Sox. Should Bregman be at third and Devers at first or DH? Yes, but Bregman's supposed to play second, so we'll evaluate him as such. Bregman's going to do well in Boston. As usual, his contact ability was elite last year, and he hit the ball hard enough to do some damage in Minute Maid Park. The switch to Fenway may rob some of his home runs, but this guy's going to hit a lot of doubles. I also see no reason to believe his defense won't translate to second base. He's a great third baseman. He was drafted as a shortstop. He's clearly very athletic. I think he'll be just fine, and he'll certainly hit. Number 2 is Marcus Semien of the Texas Rangers. Semien had a down year offensively last year, but I don't think it hurts his case at all. Even in a down year, the contact ability and plate discipline was still excellent. A 13-point gap between his ex-WOBA and his WOBA also tells you he may have underperformed. He also rivals Andres Gimenez for the best defender at the second base position. His 19 outs above average was 100th percentile last year, and his 14 fielding run value was 97th. I expect a significant offensive bounce back, but even a slight bounce back comfortably puts Semien in the top 2 with the defense he provides. And number 1, in an absolute no-brainer, is Ketel Marte. I mean, it's really not even close after last year. Marte's 151 WRC plus and 6.3 WAR led all second basemen last year by a lot. Just take a look at his Baseball Savant page. Elite batting run value, elite ex-WOBA and all expected stats, excellent average exit velocity, excellent hard hit rate. He's at the top in everything. He's one of the best hitters in the league to go along with being an above-average base runner and an excellent defender. Without Ohtani and the injury he suffered, he probably wins the MVP last year. But he easily wins the top space on my list. I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Who did I underrate? Who did I overrate? Do you have a case for a different number 1? Be sure to let me know and hit that sub button for more baseball content.